This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. My name is Paul Ledesma. I am the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. I'm one of your co-hosts, and my other co-host is...
My name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
And we're also joined by a third person here today.
Hi, my name is Christina. I'm a junior studying environmental engineering here at USC.
And Christina, welcome back to the pod. This is your second episode, is that correct?
Yes,
right?
My second. So.
Look at you, you're a pro now.
Yeah.
You're recording all those other things. And today's topic is all about non-engineering classes,
yes.
right? Electives, fun classes. And I think off the top of this whole thing, and I want you to get into it in a second, but when you were that senior in high school and you're both getting ready to go off to college, what were the types of classes you were dreaming about, or the things that you wanted to take? Because you hear about all these things like, oh, in college you get to take whatever you want to take, right? There's like this idea of like, I get to do whatever I want.
Oh, definitely. When I honestly was thinking about the types of classes I would take in college, I was most excited for my engineering classes, I had to say. I wasn't really considering the other types of classes, but when I started visiting colleges and hearing from students their experiences taking general education units and with their cool, fun minors, I started to think more. So definitely all the idea of the cool classes you could take to college came to mind, but definitely engineering classes were the only thing I thought about. But coming here and being able to just take other types of classes has definitely changed my experience. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I was really excited about differential equations, which did not disappoint, I have to say. It was a good class.
You were excited about Diffie-Q?
I was like really...
It's not an elective.
No, it counts for my major, so even better. But aside from that, that was like a specific class I was excited for. It really got hyped in calc. I think for USC, and we kind of talked about this, not on the podcast, but after, both of us were really drawn to USC because there's like so many different schools at USC, and especially art schools that are like leaders in their field. So I think maybe it wasn't a specific class, but I was super excited to have the opportunity to maybe like take some dance classes in Kaufman or take some classes in the School of Cinematic Arts and kind of just get a sense of that here and there.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of that, but I think coming into engineering, you're so excited. So I was looking forward to those as well.
So, Christina, who is joining us on this episode, and what is the listener about to be hearing here?
Yeah, so I actually talked to Audrey. We talked about the tennis class that she took her freshman year.
Well.
I also talked to Nick Vorlone, who took a class on Italian mafias in America, which was super interesting. And he even mentioned he didn't think he would take a class like that, but he just found it and took it, and now it's his favorite class. I also talked to a biomedical engineer, Sydney, who took a class on Mesoamerican cosmovision and also a self-defense class, which she had.
Wait, so time out. Mesoamerican cosmovision?
Yeah. So she explains it a bit. It's like the Aztec and Mayan civilizations.
Yeah.
In like the Central America area.
Yeah.
In the history leading up from when people first came into America to the Spanish conquest to today. So
cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
A lot of stuff to cover. And as a biomedical engineer, not something you would think that you would learn in your college experience.
No kidding, right? I remember when I went to college and I came to USC, I ended up taking these classes that I never thought I was going to take. Like I took the sailing class, and I loved that. I took the Beatles class, and I loved that.
Oh, I've heard that's a really good class.
What is the Beatles class?
It's a class on the Beatles.
I should have put it together.
At the time, this is probably what it's still called, the Beatles. Their music, their history, their culture. I forget what it was called, but it's kind of this like history class of going through the Beatles' history, what they went through, their album releases, and you listen to the music and quite literally the test is like it's like a trivia exam for the Beatles. Like you had to like listen to music and like name the song. You had to like go through what's the first, I still remember this one exam question, which is what's the Beatles song that starts, it's a backwards song. Like it starts with the ending and ends with the beginning.
Oh. What Beatles song is
and now
that?
I've said it and I'm
You have to tell us.
It's 8 days a week.
Wow.
8 days a week.
Incredible.
So 8 days a week starts with a fade in. Dun, 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 right? And that's how a song ends. It always ends with a fade.
Oh.
Okay.
And then it ends with a starting note.
That's cool.
That's interesting.
Right?
Wow. The things you can learn in these classes.
Yeah. I didn't even know I was going to talk about this. But anyway, that was fun. All these other classes. And then I hear all the students are still taking these classes. There's cinema classes that are great,
yeah.
right?
I also talked to a girl, a Kruthi, a chemical engineer, who took the film symposium class here where you get to screen movies
Cinema
before they come
466?
out. I believe so.
Yeah. Leonard Maltin's class.
Yes.
It's a
Cool.
very popular class at USC.
Very, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thursday night at the movies.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's tough to get into.
Yeah.
Gotta be on there on WebReg.
That's a senior year delicacy.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. They have a TV one too, though.
They have a TV one too?
Yeah. So there's like TV and film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does
Cool.
that one work?
You watch TV?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know as much about them. But
I'm sorry.
That
I'm answering
sounds
your
cool,
questions
though.
in the rudest way possible. So what's the Beatles class about? It's about the Beatles. How's the TV
mean-
one work? You watch TV?
It's not wrong. It's not an incorrect answer.
Well, I'm excited. We should get out of the way rather than just keep talking about this. But yes, the opportunities to be an engineer, but also take all these other extraordinary classes at USC because you have the opportunity to do so. And I think that it's important to understand that when a student studies engineering at USC, they're not just studying engineering at USC. That said, they are studying engineering every semester. It doesn't just go away for a semester. And I love that look, Audrey. But when you compare our engineering program to other engineering programs across the country, this level of flexibility and opportunity just doesn't exist anywhere else simply because of the place we have here. So let's go get it, electives.
I am here with Nick. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nick Bortolone. I am from Alamo, California, so up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm currently a sophomore studying mechanical engineering with a minor in disruptive innovation.
So, what is disruptive innovation?
So disruptive innovation is a class that really talks about breaking the mold in the current market. So if you look at the way a business grows, this product just goes faster than that business, so it really takes an idea and shatters it. So you're looking at like how Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, completely shattering mobile conversations. So the way that this class works is we get into groups of 4 or 5 students, and our professor gives us $100 of a budget to come up with some product design that we can then market to USC students or to the local community. And throughout the semester, we have to develop it, prototype it, actually make it a workable project. So that way, at the end of the semester, any proceeds we make are donated to charity.
That sounds really cool. So you're taking that this semester, right?
Yeah, so I've only had 1 2.5 hour section of it so far, so that's pretty much as I know on it as of this far.
So we'll talk about a class that you're a little more familiar with, which you said was your GSEM. So let's start with what is a GSEM?
So a GSEM is a freshman-only GE course or general education course that's 15 to 20 students, and it's generally on some sort of offbeat topic, and it's very discussion based, so there might be some reading, some writing, but when you get into the class, it's not very lecture heavy. It's much more about interacting with the professor and the other students to create a conversation to really get to know the material through a more interactive way.
And what was your GSEM in?
My GSEM was called Italian Organized Crime and Cinema and Literature, and although it sounds like there was a lot of cinema and literature, it was really more about the history of the mafia and then what the Italian mafia looks like today and its different branches, so looking at the Sicilian mafia, Calabrian, and then Neapolitan mafia and how those differ and their influences around the world.
Did you think ever that going to college and getting a degree in mechanical engineering, you would be taking a class on Italian mafia?
Absolutely not. I remember looking for the courses ahead of time before registering just so I knew what my schedule was going to look like, so that way in case registration didn't happen to go my way, I'd have some fallbacks. And I read the title of the class probably 3 times thinking, no way is this an actual class that not only is offered, but is also a GE, and it ended up being my favorite class of freshman year just because it was so out there. The professor was so enthusiastic and a little bit crazy about it, but Professor Filippi was absolutely amazing to work with. And again, getting to know him in such a small class also was a benefit, having that connection with the professor right off the bat in such an interesting topic to kind of add a little bonus to that.
So you found out about it just scrolling through web registration? It wasn't recommended to you or anything?
It actually wasn't recommended to me. So looking through the course plan that they give you once you're admitted to Viterbi, I saw that there was a GSEM slot, which is the GE seminar course code on web registration. And I just started going through and looking on WebReg with some extra time I had over the summer before my orientation to see what classes looked cool, and that one by far jumped out the most.
Do you have experience with the Italian mafia? Is that why you were so drawn to it?
I do not. Now I feel like I should be because it was so interesting. No, I'm just kidding. Absolutely not. No, it was a really interesting class because it's also eye-opening, not just to in Italy, but how that ended up moving to New York. So how that spread into the United States. And there was a whole presentation I had to give on something called the Pizza Connection, which involved thousands of pounds of illicit drugs moving around. It got its name off the French Connection drug bust and ended up being way larger than the original French Connection that it was named after. So that was just one example of something completely outlandish we learned about in the class that I never thought would even be brought up in the class, let alone be something we studied and I was able to present on.
Wow. So how did that fit into your freshman year of mechanical engineering classes, like just taking a class that was so offbeat?
I mean, it definitely helped that it was a GE, but it, I think, really goes to show that GEs here aren't like traditionally, oh, you have to take a normal history course or a normal math course or a normal life science course, for example. If that doesn't fit into your course plan, I was able to take this for an hour and a half on a Monday and a Wednesday. So it was the last classes of my day on Monday and Wednesday, but it was definitely the highlight of my days. It really helped round it out, and it fit in great. Not a ton of homework. It definitely had some, but it was stuff that was interesting to do, really interesting to do that research into. Again, a very shrouded topic, very mysterious, and having a professor who lived in Italy and served in the Italian army being able to shed light on that entire subject.
So what would you say is your favorite part of the class overall?
My favorite part was probably the lectures themselves, because again, the professor knew what he was talking about and was so invested and so involved in them. So he'd come to class and he'd be playing songs about the mafia, and because he spoke fluent Italian, he's actually technically an Italian language teacher who decided to do this class kind of as a side interesting class to teach freshmen. He knows a lot of Italian, so he's able to talk about from personal experience what that looks like, kind of standing on the outside of it. And then also when you're talking about news articles, songs, videos, and all of that, he was able to translate them for us, teach us a little bit more about it in depth than any textbook ever could.
That is very cool. I mean, I kind of want to take this class now, but unfortunately it is freshman only.
Yeah, it's for freshmen.
So, did you think that coming in and taking a class like that your freshman year, that it shaped your experience at USC at all? Like, do you think if you took it later on, it would have made a difference?
I think that it helped open my eyes to the fact that GEs don't have to just be in the field or be some sort of tie into your major, because I don't see how the Italian mafia is ever going to tie into mechanical engineering.
You never know.
Honestly, you never know. But I think it's safe to say it won't tie in. But at the same time, now I know that my GEs don't have to be mechanical engineering related or STEM related, and they can be classes that are way more fun, out there, offbeat, that help break up the normal cycle, because I feel like doing STEM classes all the time would start to feel like you're running on a hamster wheel, and the GEs are just a great way to break that mold and have a fun time in some classes and learn about things you never would otherwise.
Definitely. And the cool thing about USC is that we have so many great schools, not just the engineering school, that you can take a GE in basically anything, and you could get like an amazing education in whatever you're curious about. Yeah. And it can get as specific as Italian mafia.
Yeah, it can be as general as a class on the history of Los Angeles and everything in it, whether it's food, movies, and all of that, or you can get as specific as 3 branches of the Italian mafia and how that affects Italy and the world.
There you go. And you did.
Yes.
So would you recommend this class, and why?
Definitely recommend it. It was definitely my favorite class of freshman year, probably my favorite class I've taken up to this point, with that disruptive innovation looking like it might go and, disrupt that trend.
Oh, gosh.
But it was a great class because it mixed being able to read novels that were both fiction and nonfiction that were pretty short, nothing too strenuous, have a good in-depth discussion on them, not just kind of read and forget about them, as well as having a professor who was obviously very, very invested in and interested in the topic, and it showed in the way that he was able to get the class into discussions. It wasn't even lecturing. It felt a lot more involved and a lot more interactive throughout it. So it was a mixture of very interesting material that you would never find in, I guess, outside of a college. Definitely a very USC kind of class to have, and then also the passion of the professor as well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about this class.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I am here with Kruthi. Kruthi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Kruthi. I'm a junior studying chemical engineering. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and on campus I work at the JEP House as a young scientist program teaching assistant and site coordinator, and I also do research on batteries in an inorganic chemistry lab.
Awesome. So what non-STEM class did you take?
I took Theatrical Film Symposium, which is CTCS 466, last semester.
Awesome. And then how did you hear about this class?
I heard about it because every admission center tour guide has brought it up. They always talk about that one class that's Thursdays 6 to 10, and it fills up really fast. So when you're a senior and you have that first registration spot, you should take it. And you get to watch movies before they come out. And then in my sorority, a senior was late to like her senior send-off banquet, which is like the biggest thing for seniors, because she was taking that class and she got to see Avengers Endgame early. And for me, that was a big sell. So I was like, she got to see Avengers early. I want an opportunity like that. So I took it.
She got to see event early?
Yeah.
How early did she get to see it?
In the class, you get to see the films up to 2 weeks early. So Avengers, they saw 1 week early. Actually, it might have been a day, but still. They got to see it before it came out.
That's a big movie, too. So it's not just like smaller movies on the side. It's like big blockbusters.
It is big blockbusters. Like when I took it, we got to see Frozen 2 early. We got to see Knives Out. And you don't just get to watch the movies early. You also see the movie and then do a Q&A with someone who worked on the film. So for Knives Out, when we saw that, we got to talk to director Rian Johnson, which was incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was the best movie you watched in that class, would you say?
It would be between two for me. Knives Out was definitely my favorite. Because it was just a fantastic movie, a whodunit. Daniel Craig as like this random Southern detective was incredible. And then the Q&A was really interesting. But then the other movie that I thought was really unique that I really enjoyed was Dolomite Is My Name, which was about blaxploitation in the 70s or 80s. It was about a comedian, Rudy Ray Moore, played by Eddie Murphy. And it had sort of like an Ed Wood energy where this guy just like really wants to make a film, has no filmmaking experience whatsoever, and it just follows his journey like through like ambition, very crude humor, and just like it was like kind of pure almost. And he just made this like super crass movie called Dolomite in the 70s, and it was the first of many. And this film tracked like his journey from like comedy to that, and it's on Netflix, so you should check it out.
Wow, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience with film going into this? Like, did you expect coming to USC that you would get involved in film or that you would do anything related to film here?
I wanted to do something related to film. My twin brother is really, really, really into film. He runs like a blog and everything. And when I was little, my brother and I would go to classes at the Northwest Film Center, which is where Coraline was made. So my face was on their bookmarks. It was a whole thing. So I knew I wanted to just like at least check it out. I would hate myself if I didn't take at least one class. And prior to Theatrical Film Symposium, I took Intro to Cinema, which is CTCS 190 as a GEA. So that allowed me to get familiar with the department. And I also helped some people out on like film sets who are in the cinematic arts school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So you said that this class was it's really difficult to register for because it sounds like a really cool class. A lot of people want to take it. So how was your experience registering for it? Did you find that it was difficult to fit it into your engineering schedule?
Because the timing is Thursday 6 to 10, I didn't have any trouble fitting it into my engineering schedule. Luckily, I didn't have any weird labs going on, and I scheduled my labs for Wednesday evenings. Chemical engineering 444, yay. So it wasn't difficult because of like that evening time slot to fit in. They try to make it really accessible to as many students as possible. The one thing I will say is that you miss out on like a lot of fun things happen on Thursday evenings on campus. Like I'm a big fan of How I Met Your Mother, and Josh Radnor, who plays Ted Mosby, came to campus on a Thursday evening and like talks with Bill Nye and things like that. It wasn't the same semester, but those usually happen on Thursday evenings. So you miss out on like some of the other fun USC events, but I would say it's very worth it. And registering for it was fine. It wasn't nearly full by the time I had it, because I had senior standing, because I'm really cool. Yeah.
Well, awesome. That is very cool. So what would you say is the biggest thing you got out of the class? Like, do you go to the movies more now, or do you look at films in a different way?
I really have an appreciation for every aspect of the filmmaking process. So for the movie Marriage Story, I'm a big fan of the director, Noah Baumbach, but then we didn't get like anyone that you would normally think of to work on the film. We got the production designer, and I knew that production design was a very involved field, but I didn't realize like just how comprehensive it was. It was literally like I was taking notes on the movie the whole time, and I was just like, oh, like orange means that Scarlett Johansson's character is winning, and green, because I was planning on writing a paper, green and blue means that Adam Driver is winning. And then when the production designer came, I got to ask her a question about like, oh, like, were you actually being that intentional with the colors? And she was like, yeah, and like took it a step further and said, it takes place in LA and New York. So the whites in New York are like weathered and like lived in, and then the whites in LA are like crisp and clear cut and new. And that like had additional meaning for the movie. And I was just like, what? Like, you have to like think about these things. And on top of that, production design also takes like all the locations for a film. So the director was kind of annoying, and he wanted to do a movie in LA and use locations that had never been filmed at before, but LA has been like scraped like for every location has like been filmed at. So they really had to work hard to find spaces that were new. And that was something that I gained an appreciation for. So now when I watch a movie, I'm just like, where was that filmed? How did they find it? What did they do to that space? And I'm a lot more aware of that.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So you said you had to write a paper for this class. Was it difficult to adjust kind of from going like an engineering course plan where you have to do a lot of math and science-based problems to taking a film class where you had to write papers and analyze films?
For me, it wasn't difficult. All of high school, I like wanted to go into the humanities. That's a whole other story we won't get into. But I love writing papers, so for me, it was a nice reprieve. I do love my STEM classes, like I absolutely love my major, but it was really nice to get away from that and just like do an analysis on film. I'm a big film nerd, as in, not that like I know a ton about it, but I just really enjoy movies. So for me, it was nice to just like nerd out over really small things. Like I said, I like watched Marriage Story and just started taking notes on the colors immediately. You can bring guests to Theatrical Film Symposium, and the person I brought with me was very annoyed at both my note taking and my sobbing throughout the film. But it happens. And you have to write 3 papers total for the class. It wasn't hard. They do kind of grade difficult, but like it's okay.
Wow. Well, that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite part of the class overall, would you say?
I would say one thing about Theatrical Film Symposium that a lot of people don't know. So 2 things. It's taught by famed film critic Leonard Maltin. If you don't know who he is, there are 2 things to note about him. He writes a TV guide, or like a movie guide. It's called Movies on TV. He's written it since like, I don't want to like age him incorrectly, so like let's just say the 60s. He's written one every year for like every movie ever. He writes just like a short description. So his reviews are really, really like well known and well reputed. The other thing is that he has the Guinness World Record for world's shortest movie review. It was for the old movie Isn't It Romantic, and his review was no. So he is also a savage, and he has a very wholesome view on movies. So he encourages you to like make sure all of your opinions are valid, and that like when you're watching a movie, like be conscious of more things. He wants to teach you more about film, but he doesn't want to force you to like traditionally good movies if you just don't like them. So that's one thing that I liked about it. He really like validates you, and like it's okay with whatever taste you have. The second thing that I loved about the class is the thing that people don't know, which is you watch a short subject before every film. You watch like anywhere from like a 5 to 15 minutes shorter movie beforehand, which can be like old Popeye cartoons, old trailers, like small TV specials, things like that. So we watched like some of the original Little Rascals. We watched the original trailer for Psycho, and trailers used to be really different back in the day. The trailer for Psycho was just Alfred Hitchcock like walking through the set of Psycho and being like, wow, this is the woman's bedroom. She was a little eccentric, and like just like commenting on everything and like low-key spoiling the whole movie. He walks into the bathroom and he's just like, yeah, something rather unsavory happened here, especially like right around like this toilet here. Lots of weird stuff going on there. And it ends with him like, and yeah, like especially like right behind this curtain, and then he peels back the curtain, and then, you know, like the high strings go off and it's like Psycho. Watch Psycho in theaters.
Oh wow.
But it was so different. It wasn't like promoting the movie by showing scenes. It was just the director walking through the set and being just like, yeah, that's the house where something happens. This is a motel. You should probably like check this out. It's kind of interesting. And like, I don't know, he's very nonchalant. So the short subjects, that was one of my favorite things.
Wow. That is all very new stuff that I guess you can take away from the class. So it sounds like you really enjoyed it and you learned a lot. So overall, would you recommend this class to someone, and why?
I would 3,000% recommend this class to anyone who can fit it in. For me, it was kind of a luck thing. I was trying to like graduate chemical engineering with the hardest emphasis. By hardest, I mean like largest course load.
Which one?
Bio. And then with a minor. So I needed to be taking a full 18-unit schedule every semester. But then the lovely chemical engineering department made a big like catalog change where all the classes went from 3 to 4 units. So I ended up in the fall having like 4 extra units where I couldn't put a spring only class, and like basically no class I needed to take was offered. So I ended up dropping my emphasis, but that's a separate story. You can probably edit this out. And then I had 4 units free. So I took theatrical film symposium just because I could fit it in. And it's a really nice break. It's a nice place to just like center yourself, relax, watch a movie, and you're being productive while doing it because you're doing it for a grade. You can also take it pass, no pass, just if you want to audit the class. And I would just recommend it if you like movies or if you just want to like experience something kind of new. It's a pretty low stakes environment. And you can learn a lot, definitely like enhance your cultural experience. That's what I would say.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me about the film class. That sounds like an awesome experience. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I am here with Sydney. Sydney, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Sydney. I am a junior majoring in biomedical engineering.
Where are you from?
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Great. So what fun non-STEM class do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about a class I took last year, Anthropology 140, which is Mesoamerican Culture and Cosmovision.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot more interesting. I took it as like just a GE requirement to like fulfill one of my GE requirements, and it ended up being a lot more interesting than I was expecting.
So what is Mesoamerican Culture and Cosmovision? What did you talk about?
Well, we talked a lot about we started like way back, like historically just in the whole region of Mesoamerica, the people that lived there, and kind of just chronologically progressing over time, like what was just like, what were the people's beliefs? How did they interact with each other? It was very historical, but it also, delved a lot into like culture and like societies back in olden times in Mesoamerica, back in the good old days.
So what is Mesoamerica, and where is it, and what are maybe some notable culture groups that people would recognize from it?
Yeah, so it's kind of just the region that encompasses, like, I think South America. I did take this class a year ago, so I'm sorry to Professor Seligson that I took the class. I've retained only parts of the knowledge of it, but yeah, a lot of if you think of like the Aztecs and like those kinds of like Machu Picchu, like those areas, all those ruins, those were Mesoamerican peoples.
Very cool. So going into the class, what were your expectations? You say you took it just to fulfill a requirement. So did you know anything that you would be covering previously, or were you coming in like a blank slate?
It was a pretty blank slate. I took the class with a couple friends of mine, and the professor had really rate my professor rating, so at the very least I thought it would just be like a relatively easy class that I could hang out with some friends in.
Awesome. Was it recommended to you at all, or was it just, how did you even find it?
I was the first of my friends to find it. It was the only GE that fit into my schedule that semester, and it kind of just happened to be one that ended up being a fun class.
Cool. So going into the class, what would you say is the biggest takeaway you had?
I think the biggest takeaway, not even just content-wise, is I think being in engineering and then taking classes that are like GEs or anything that's kind of outside of engineering, it's nice to have that break, because I think sometimes if you're taking all engineering courses or all STEM courses, you can get kind of tired of just like doing math or looking at molecules and stuff, and it's nice to just learn some history or learn about human sacrifice or something that's just, not a number.
Human sacrifice?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a number. You're right.
Human sacrifice isn't a number.
Sydney Rosser, 2020.
That's what I learned in that class.
Oh, God.
You're welcome.
What was your favorite part of the class overall?
I really did enjoy the lectures. I was afraid that I was going to have trouble, like, paying. It was like an hour and a half class. I was worried I would have trouble paying attention and that it wouldn't be interesting. But the professor was super engaging. He made everything super exciting. You know, it was all, like I said, human sacrifice and wars and ancient society, which is surprisingly really interesting, especially when he wasn't, like, dry. He made sure that everyone was, you know, kind of engaged.
So you talked a little bit about the material covered in the class. You mentioned the Aztecs and ancient ruins in Mesoamerica. Do you remember anything else that you went over in the class?
I think a lot of it interesting. It was interesting to see how history is presented, like, from different groups, and how things are, one, misconstrued today, how we can look back on something and, you know, think of it differently just because, you know, obviously we weren't there, but also because history is written by, you know, the winning party. So a lot of the times we were looking at things from the perspective of the people that were actually living there during, like, times of, like, colonialization, which is not, I think, what is typically taught, like, when you learn about, like, the Spanish coming into that area. Like, you hear about it from the Spaniards because those are the people that, quote unquote, you know, won. Like, they colonized and they, you know, murdered a ton of people and stuff. So they're the ones that got to write the history of it, when there is, you know, there is another side of that story, the people that lived there and the people that had a whole society there that was kind of torn down. So it was really interesting to hear about it from, like, another perspective.
So you mentioned that with your engineering schedule, it was good to have a class that didn't focus on numbers. So how did it fit into your engineering schedule? Did you find it difficult to balance a class that was more lecture heavy versus, like, discussion and lab based?
I think because I found the class, like, easy, like, engaging and easy to follow, I didn't really have a hard time fitting it into my schedule because I wasn't really doing a whole lot of, like, there wasn't really homework. There were just, you know, essays and tests that ended up being not super time consuming or difficult to write or study for because, you know, I went to class every day and I paid attention.
So would you recommend this class to someone who's interested in just taking a GE about history or culture?
Yeah, I think it's whether you're taking it because you want to learn more about that specific part of history or you're just looking for a GE to fulfill a requirement and that fits in there, I think it's definitely a good one to take.
Cool. Are there any other fun non-STEM classes that you think would be just cool to mention or cool to talk about?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to take a couple other cool classes. Also, my sophomore year, I took a just a 1-unit self-defense class, which was definitely a very interesting experience. Though I think I wouldn't recommend taking that class unless you are willing to, like, physically throw hands with strangers.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what you do.
How did you find that class?
I think I actually heard about that through a friend. And I had, you know, an extra unit. It was only, like, twice a week. I took it. I audited it, so I didn't have to take it for a grade. I was just there to fight, you know?
Aside from being there to fight, what is auditing a class? That's a good point.
Yeah, so you can take classes for a grade. You can take a class, pass, no pass. If you audit a class, it basically means that you're not taking it for a grade at all. Like, you can't pass it or fail it. You're kind of just there to vibe. It's not going to show up on your transcript, like, negatively or positively.
Cool. Well, that all sounds like super cool opportunities for you to have. And in coming to USC and pursuing an engineering degree, did you think that you'd be able to take an anthropology class and a self-defense class? And I'm sure there's other ones that you have taken.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that that I was going to have to take GEs, you know, classes, like, outside of my area of study, but I don't think I fully expected, like, how many options there are to take for classes. You know, there's probably hundreds of types of, like, classes that you can take outside of, like, whatever you're studying, and, you know, at least some of them are going to be interesting to you. So I think it's worth it to kind of seek those out.
Awesome. That's a very good message.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about this.
Of course.
It was really cool to hear about your experiences.
All right. Thank you.
I am here with Audrey. Audrey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Audrey Roberts, and Christina and I work together on the podcast.
You frequent the podcast every week.
But I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering here at USC, and I'm from Denver.
Great. So what non-STEM class did you take that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so I think the kind of the biggest, I guess, sort of elective class I've taken that sort of fits in this category is tennis. So my first semester freshman year, I took, I think it's like a 1 or 2 unit tennis class. I'm not sure, actually. But USC has like a PE department, basically. And there's like a bunch of different classes like tennis and yoga and like even sailing and surfing. And since there's such a small number of units, it's pretty easy to fit it into your schedule usually. So my class met, I think, twice a week for like an hour or so. And it was really fun. I grew up playing tennis, so I knew how to play it pretty well, but it was a good opportunity to just sort of get some exercise for one, and then also just have like a built-in couple hours a week that you're like not doing something related to engineering, but it's like also something that you kind of have to be doing because it's a class, you got a grade. And yeah, I really liked it.
So you got a grade in the class?
Yes. Yeah.
How were you like assessed?
So it was actually like a little more honestly rigorous than I thought it was going to be. So we like played tennis weekly, and I don't remember, I think he did like kind of a playing evaluation, but it wasn't like necessarily how good or bad you were at tennis, because like some people had never played in their lives before, and then a couple of us had played for a number of years. I believe we had a midterm and a final. I know we had a final, and it was like a long multiple choice test that was like on the rules of tennis and like maybe how your hand would move when you hit a shot. So it was kind of hard. Like some of it I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I would know this if I hadn't played for a while.
Was it like Scantron?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So it was like a real it was like a real final exam. It was in the like finals week schedule. And so yeah, that was kind of the parameters of the course, but I think beyond the like exam part, you know, you were probably more judged on like effort and if you could demonstrate sort of basic proficiency in a couple of things. But yeah, it was like a real class.
So you said there were like beginners there. So was it mainly freshmen and sophomores, or were there all grades?
It was all grades, but I think it was like tennis 1. I think there's another version, but you have to, I don't know what the sort of like prerequisite requirements are for it. So it was definitely like listed in the course schedule as a beginner level class. So I think there were maybe like 3 of us who had played before and were like pretty decent at tennis, and then most everyone else had never played. But it was actually kind of funny, that same semester, my doubles partner from when I played club tennis growing up, she was also in the class, but in a different one. So with the same like kind of coach professor guy, but I would say mostly beginner, but all levels too. So
that's fun.
Yeah.
So how did it fit into your engineering schedule to have like a few hours set aside for tennis? Was it stressful to have to like focus on that for a bit, or was it a relief?
I think because sometimes like I don't know, maybe if I'm at a club meeting or something, I'm like, oh my gosh, like thinking about how much stuff I have to do when I go home. But I'm not usually like that in class, because it's like, oh, I'm also getting a grade for this, and like I'm, you know, paying for this, like I have to be here kind of. So it wasn't, I think that element of it, just that it was a class, and like quite honestly, like the units that I'm getting a grade for in tennis count just as much for my GPA as like my engineering classes, that it didn't have that same like, oh, like I could be doing something more important. Like it still felt important. Not to say, I mean, I think that's sort of like a little bit of a naive attitude, because that's how it felt freshman year, but I think now, like, I've kind of realized a little more important of balance, and that, like, it is important to take time and maybe, like, go to the gym or get some exercise as, like, a way to relieve stress, not just serving the purpose of, like, getting exercise necessarily. So, I think because of that, it was always kind of something I look forward to, is like, here's an hour that's like built in, and it's not time that I need to be thinking of like, oh my gosh, like I could be doing all these other things right now, because like that was really what I was supposed to be doing then. But it was sort of weird, like going to my classes like with my tennis racket and like wearing my tennis stuff, and then I don't think I had a class after it, which was good because it'd be kind of gross to go to class like all sweaty from tennis. But yeah, and so many people take PE classes here too that I think it's like,
it's normal.
People wouldn't be like weirded out by you going to class with a tennis racket, but there's so many different ones. And I know like a couple people who in my major who took it this year too. So.
Oh, nice. Are there tennis courts on campus?
Yeah, there's a ton of tennis courts, like right behind CAPS, actually where our math department is, so we have a lot of engineering classes there. So this hall behind it, they have like the tennis courts that the tennis teams play on, because USC has a great women's tennis team for one. It's like D1. And then they have a number of courts kind of behind them that are open for all students to use. So actually one of my friends in Mechie this year, we've like made a pact to sort of get back into playing tennis, because I haven't really played since I took this class, which is sort of a bummer because I grew up playing, and this is like a good way for me to keep up with it that first semester, but obviously it's kind of a long time ago now. So, yeah, they're there for anyone to use. So
that's fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of them too, but kind of behind the baseball field.
Oh, that's good to know. I feel like there's all these little gems around campus that you just, like the Lion Center swimming pool apparently opens at 6 a.m. if anyone's an early swimmer.
I know like a couple of my friends are on the swim team who aren't in engineering, but I always like wish I take advantage of these things more, because it's so awesome to have. I mean, obviously, if it's a course, then you're paying for it via tuition. Well, I guess everything you gotta pay for via tuition. But it's awesome to have like these facilities, at least while you're here, to be free. You know, with whatever your situation is here. So, you know, you might as well use them, and they're really nice facilities because our athletic teams are great and use them as well. So, yeah, I definitely. Kind of in the year and a half I have left, which is crazy, need to get out there and use them more, because it's not like free to go to a pool sometimes after graduation. So
we gotta take advantage of it now.
Yeah. And same with like, they have for the PE classes, they have like weightlifting and stuff like that, so it's kind of a good way. I know like fitness classes can be kind of expensive if you were to take them off campus, so it's a good way to fit them in. And like oftentimes as an engineer you might have a unit left over, and so USC you can enroll in up to 18 units like covered in the cost of your tuition. But so like for a mechanical engineer, a lot of our classes are 3 units, so like unless you could take 6 of them, and then it would maybe kind of divide up a little more evenly, but you know, oftentimes you might have a 4-unit class, so it doesn't always add up. So it's a good way to use all your units too to take those classes. And I guess if you're already maybe going to the gym or playing tennis, you can get credit for it too.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good part of it as well.
On that note, so when you did find that you had room in your schedule, did you specifically seek out a tennis class because you'd done it previously, or were you like looking for it on web registration, or how did you find out about the class?
I think I remember like asking my advisor, are there any 1-unit classes? And she's an engineering advisor, so I think kind of like within the context of engineering, she's like, no, we don't have like 1-unit engineering ones. So then I remember kind of looking through web reg, and like as a freshman, I think as a junior most of us know that they have these courses. But as a freshman, I wasn't quite sure, so I was just looking through everything and found these. And I think I kind of did tennis because I knew how to play, and I didn't. I was still like in high school. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to like get all A's and whatever. So I didn't want to take something I was bad at and like not get a good grade, which is bad. I shouldn't have done that. It would have been good to learn something new. It was still fun. But I remember before I came to college, like the summer before I came to college, a good family friend who also went to school in Southern California, I remember her telling me the story about how she took like kite surfing or something at her school and like got a C minus or like failed the class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't take a PE class and fail it.
Failing kite surfing.
Yeah.
That sounds fun though.
Yeah, I guess so. And since
gosh.
I guess since it's not for your major, like maybe it doesn't matter. But I think I was kind of still nervous about stuff like that. So I was like, oh, like tennis fits in my schedule and I kind of know how to play. But now, I still have a little bit of time left, and I definitely think I don't know if surfing or sailing is like one unit or not. I think tennis was, now that I think about it more.
Yeah.
But I want to take another one that's like something I don't know how to do.
Yes.
Just because it would be good to learn something new. But even so, I still like learned a lot in the class, and it was like such a great opportunity to like get feedback when you're playing from like our professor, I guess, like coach. I don't know what term to use there, but so like
professor coach.
Yeah.
It's a joint term now.
Joint term, yeah. So like it was still a great way to get better at tennis, even though it was like something I did have some knowledge on before. But I think that was why I chose it, which is I guess kind of maybe not the best. It's good to choose things you don't know and like kind of take the challenge, but
it sounds like it was fun.
Yeah, I was just looking for something fun and like not something to add more stress, I guess, my first semester. But yeah, that's it.
So what overall would you say was your favorite part of taking the tennis class?
I think just like the opportunity to really have it like built into your schedule to play, because I think one of the things I kind of missed about high school, like the first year, was I've kind of gotten used to it now, but just not having that routine of like, I go to school from like 7 to 3 or whatever, and then I go to tennis practice after, and then I go like to whatever and do my homework, like kind of that something where it's like you have it every day and it's like an obligation. Like you really have a lot of free time in college to start with. You just get to choose how to fill it. So I liked that it was kind of like forced into my schedule. And I liked that I had a cadence of like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I did in high school. I think it's kind of a way to like connect me to my old hobbies. And now that I think about it a little more, I kind of wish I would have kept up with it, because I do think now, like as a junior, I've lost so many of kind of my hobbies and from high school. Not because, I think partly maybe because I've become interested in other things, which is good. But I think sometimes, maybe like crave a sense of home or something, and it's good to sort of keep up with something that you did in high school, and it's a super easy way to do it, or it's an easy way to learn a new skill. So if that makes sense. But I liked that the two things I liked about it most, I guess, is that it sort of built into my routine, and it was a way to connect to what I was doing in high school, especially because engineering was so different for me because I went to an art school.
Oh, wow.
But like everything was so new, so it was good to have something that was like really familiar when like my other classes weren't really. But yeah, it was a good experience.
Nice. So would you recommend this class?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Even if you know how to play tennis or not, I think it's a good way. And tennis is such a great sport too. Like it's social. Like in the class you can meet a lot of people, which is great. It's good exercise, and you can play your whole life. And like in so many communities there's tennis courts, and you just, if you have a racket, can play. So I think that's more a pitch for the sport than for the class, but the class can help you get into it. So
that's awesome. Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about this.
Yeah, and I think just like kind of more from the engineering perspective, I think it's super important to take classes that aren't in engineering, because it's really your only opportunity to do so. I mean, of course, you can take like a tennis clinic or something once you're older, but if you want to go to grad school or something like that, you're not going to be able to take classes outside of your major as much. So as an undergrad, you have a really unique opportunity to explore some different fields, and USC has such a great offering, not just like beyond PE, of course, but all of our schools, Kauffman, SCA, all of these schools are incredible. So, like, if you have an opportunity, a few extra units, definitely, my advice would be to fill it with something that's not engineering, because you're already taking so many engineering units. And it's a good way to just sort of broaden your horizons a bit.
Definitely. That's such a good message.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Lots of fun classes here.
What is your favorite class that you've taken?
Oh, that's a good question.
That isn't engineering.
I actually took an introduction to poetry class
Ooh.
last year, and I totally didn't expect to like it. The teacher had really good reviews on Rate My Professor, which is a really fun, good tool to use. That's a good recommendation. But it was really interesting because I came in kind of just expecting to fill a general education requirement, but I ended up being able to write poetry that my TA then encouraged me to pursue getting published, which I'm in the process of doing. And
really?
Then, yeah,
cool.
it was really interesting. I learned a lot about poetry. I got to read a lot and have a lot of favorite authors now. And then I came up, and I have a group of friends now where every few weeks we go around LA and we go to live poetry readings. So it's a cool group. A lot came out of it.
That is fantastic. What an amazing story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a really cool class. Have a lot of good memories.
And you're publishing.
Yes.
Oh, you should be so proud. That is so great.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Can I get a copy? I want to see some poetry.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's a good time.
And the cool part about it was kind of a sub note in that comment, but to make clear for all of our listeners, that was not an elective. It was the ability to hand select a general education course around an interest of yours, which is something that we often talk about. Can I take elective classes, or can I take classes outside of engineering? And in fact, we make you. You got to fulfill these general education requirements, and we have categories with dozens and dozens of classes where you pick what sounds cool to you. You pick something on poetry. Look, you have a really cool new passion. I hope it sounds like it is. At least I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, definitely. And it's not something that I totally expected to spend as much time doing that I am now. But now that I've taken that class, I'm really passionate about it. So
fantastic. What about
awesome.
you? Other than Diffie Q. God, what a nerdy answer.
Oh my goodness.
Was it because that you knew that tennis was coming up? Like you were going to talk about tennis?
That I said Diffie Q.
Yeah.
No, I just like have these memories of like being in my high school classroom, being like
Dreaming of
excited for
Diffie
Diffie Q. But my favorite class, I took a class called IML 365, and it's in the School of Cinematic Arts, and it's for my minor actually.
Interactive media.
No.
Media. Is that what IML stands for?
No, it's in the Media Arts and Practice program.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
yeah, kind of similar. And so it's taught by Professor Holly Willis, and she's incredible, an amazing scholar here at SCA. And it kind of just explored kind of where cinema's going, and we learned about a lot of really cool artists. So I liked that class a lot. And then I guess a year ago now, I took one of my GEs as well, was African American popular culture, and it was a really cool class.
Really?
Yeah. The professor was amazing, and we looked at a lot of different films and readings, and even like ads to sort of learn about African American popular culture throughout history, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a super big class either. Like sometimes GEs can be bigger sort of lecture hall classrooms, but this wasn't too large, so it had a lot of great discussion as well. So those two I liked.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. At the top, I talked about some of mine, like when I was a student, and I'm an old man, and I think this is now the theme of our podcast when I get on here is I'm just reminiscing and being really old, which with our upcoming recordings we have next week, by the way, it's going to get worse.
Oh gosh.
It's going to get worse. Sorry, Audrey. But yeah, the Beatles class, that faculty member, I don't know whether he's still here, but he's the one that started it, Biersock. And I took 3 of his classes. I took a freshman seminar on the counterculture of the 60s. I took the Beatles class and then a classic rock class because I was like, well, let's continue the theme, which was really fun and cool. And then sailing was awesome. It was amazing. I mentioned the class I never took. I wanted to take Cinema 466, which was discussed. But I loved my as a GE, the intro to cinema, which was Drew Casper's class. I know he still teaches it, Cinema 190, like critical approaches to film or something like that. And I still to this day, I'm so snobby when talking about movies, about like it looks like they're breaking the fourth wall, and all these different elements of understanding how it works, and lighting and cinematography and everything else. It's really cool, and all those things you only have because of these little opportunities to take advantage of them. So it's definitely my best advice to always just try something that you never thought you'd be interested in, like your poetry example.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like as an undergrad, this is really the only time we're going to have an opportunity to take some of these courses. Like sometimes I think there's sort of a temptation to take another engineering class and like get another skill. And I've definitely kind of been in this place where I'm like, oh, should I don't know, take this EE class or do whatever. And I think at the end of the day, I've kind of convinced myself out of it sometimes, because you can always maybe get a master's or something where you can take more engineering classes, but really rarely are you going to have the opportunity to take advantage of a school like Kauffman or SDA or SCA.
That was exactly what I was going to go to, because I forgot my favorite class that I always recommend to students, specifically engineering students, when they come to me saying, can I take more engineering? I'm like, go take a theater class.
Oh.
Go take specifically like the improv class. Because the improv class, I took it because I thought it would be hilarious. It was. I don't know if this is still true. At the time, it was one of the only classes you could take at USC twice and get a grade twice. And so I
Wow.
got 2 A's out of that class.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Bragging, Paul.
I know, right? Well, when it's your only 2 A's, then you get really excited about it. So improv. The teacher retired. I was still keep in touch with him, but the program still remains, and it's the idea of improv is great, because what improv is a course that teaches your core how to communicate in a different manner, and it teaches you so much about some of the stuff we talk about with getting into the breathing ideas of it, understanding how you're inflecting concepts. It doesn't like manually go through that, like this is how you communicate, but it takes you through a bunch of exercises that you become very aware about how you communicate. And it changed everything about who I am and how I do things and how I identify and how I can understand someone. And when I don't understand someone, and when I'm realizing they're not understanding me, it comes back down to the core. And the teacher that taught that was like an old ballet teacher. He was a clown in New York City, which is like he was part of a clown troupe. Crazy professional clown.
Wow.
And we should probably have him on. He has his own podcast now. Maybe we can have him on. I'll see if I can contact him if he's not doing anything else. But he did so many great things, and he actually encouraged us to go take a monologue class. He used to teach a monologue class as well. I never went that far with it because that seemed like a lot of work, and it was like soul searching. And I was like, I'm not that serious of a guy.
You had your 2 A's already.
What's that?
You had your 2 A's already.
I don't need to. Yeah. At risk of my GPA lowering further if I took the monologue class. But like improv is such a useful exercise.
Yeah.
And we've done some improv exercises with engineers in the past because it's all about communicating your ideas. And it's very fun. And I met some of my best friends in there too. And what's fun is that when you take a theater class, you don't know it, but 5 years from now, you're going to be watching TV or commercials, and all of a sudden you're like, I had class with her.
Oh.
And like to this day, I'll watch like award shows. I'm like, she was in my improv class.
Wow. Oh my goodness, that's cool. Yeah, I think it's some of the Writing 340 classes for engineers.
Yes.
They like make them do improv one day.
Yes.
yes.
That's the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't warn you either. You just walk in one day and there's a different teacher and they're just like, everyone stand up. We're doing improv.
That's the way it should be
Just
done.
jump right in.
So this is like the mandatory writing class for everyone at USC, but there's like topics by major, and one of them is engineering.
Yeah, the biggest thing with improv is stop thinking,
yeah. Which is hard for engineers.
which is why you have to do it.
Crazy.
It's good practice.
Well, any
we've
other
gone on and on.
classes? I know. We could talk about fun classes all day. There's so many of them.
When you get here and you're an engineer, make sure that you're utilizing the flexibility of your general education credit. Make sure that you're exploring an opportunity to do something different. And if you find a passion, take the opportunity to maybe get a minor in it, because that's the only place you can. So that's enough. That's my soapbox.
I agree. I'm with that. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
I'm here for it.